goals for our presentation today. We're going to be talking about a new name. In the past, we had talked about formative assessment binders, or FABs. We are going to be changing the name. We're going to be talking about why we're changing the name and why now it's so important for us to know where our assessments are and what's going on with our assessments. We're going to talk about what this includes, and then we're going to talk about the consolidation of assessments. So let's get started. So goal number one was a new name. So in the past, you've heard of the FAB, Formative Assessment Binder. I know some teachers use an actual binder, and that's where they keep all of their assessments. Some teachers use a crate. Some teachers use their desk drawer, files. Sometimes it's all over your classroom, depending on the time of the year, right? When it's assessment time, if you're like me, you might have assessment stacks here and here and here and here. So with just the changing of standards-based, since we're slowly moving to standards-based and we're trying out some new things that way, we're talking about assessments changing and common assessments and the importance of anecdotal records. We thought now would be a good time to just spruce up the FAB. We're going to change up the name and talk about some things to use this new idea. So the new name is a SPEC. So a SPEC stands for Student Proficiency Evidence Collection. It's the same thing as a FAB in the sense that it's a place for you to house all of your assessments, formative or summative. So this could be your anecdotal records, your running records. It could be your end of the quarter assessments that we're doing right now. If you're a standards-based lead, then you're going to be having some common assessments you're going to be trying out for us. So those will be housed there. Anything assessment is there for us. Like we talked about before, it was previously known as a SAP, the Student Assessment Portfolio. So it's not a huge change. The biggest change is that it's really important that everyone has something in their classroom to house all of this in. And we're just, like I said, we're changing up the name because really we're talking more about students' proficiency levels and less of that like end of the quarter, what they have to have. And like I said earlier, it is a collection of your formative and summative assessments. And I will turn it over to Ms. Darylyn.
So we're talking about why are we doing this now? We've always had FABs. It's always, this is something we've always done. So I just want to start this part of it by asking you, where are your assessments from last year? Just kind of think through that. What assessments do you have? And where are they at the moment? And I promise you there is no judgment if you're thinking, I don't know, because that's kind of the whole thing. This thing hit and we had to have some sort of accountability for student grading. And I know, I had stuff that I needed to do my job at school. Some of it I had at home. Some of it was I don't even know where in somebody else's classroom. It's everywhere. So when you start thinking about what ifs, and when we start thinking about all of what DESE is now going to hold us accountable for, it's something that we really wanted to firm up. I think our school district is really fantastic about recognizing the importance of formative assessments and using those assessments. And I think we're fantastic at having some good summative assessment that is common among all of us. Of course, that's something we're continually working on. But we all know it's important. The problem is that sometimes we're not sure where it all is. And so we have several changes coming down the pike just to make things better for our students and better for this new age of learning that we're now in. And so this is a logistic piece of all of those things that we need to come together. So one of the main things that we've been talking about in the coaches front is proficiency scales. You may have heard of these. Some of you have had a little bit of training. Some of you have never heard the word before. That's totally okay. This coming school year, you will have 2 leads in each grade level who are going to be working with us to start honing these proficiency scales, because the goal eventually is to have our standards-based grade card and to be fully implemented in a standards-based learning focus. If we went true standards-based learning, that would really turn our world upside down. So our grade card is really going to be like a standards referenced, but we're calling it standards-based because we really are focusing in on those standards. When we start using these proficiency scales, these are a guide for us to know what mastery is going to look like for a student, what a level 3 truly looks like, what is proficient. It also has a guide for us about a level 2. What does approaching proficiency look like? The problem is, in order to say this child has mastered it, we have to have evidence. And that E in spec is a huge deal. That evidence is going to be so profoundly important for us. It will be important. Now, I know that you're thinking, well, we're not doing that yet, but now let's go into Canvas and online learning. We don't have, if we are at home, we don't have their little faces in front of us. We can't question, you know those moments when you look at them and you can see the haze and you know something is not clicking, and you can start having that conversation to start building, where are they lost? What are they missing? And all of those things. When we're at home trying to do online, we don't have that benefit. We lose that piece. And I know that piece is so very important. And so we are really going to need to rely heavily on what are they doing that shows us what they're able to do. What do they know? What can they do? And that evidence is going to be a huge part for us whenever we're starting to look at our Canvas and our online learning. The other part of that is that it's required by DESE with our AMI plan and our AMIX plan. A huge part of being able to count student attendance is having a body of work to prove that students participated. When I was reading over the AMI requirements from DESE, that's what they kept going back to, is they have to complete work. They have to do something to show that they have participated, and that is their attendance. Make sense? So having evidence that they have participated, having evidence that they are truly doing what we think they can do, and having evidence to show, yes, they are proficient in this standard is going to be really essential as we move forward. So that's why now. Let's see where we at. Organizational ideas. So we're not going to micromanage how you organize that, just like we never did before. Raise your hand if you like to use the binders. Anybody a binder person? What about crates? Anybody a crate person? Okay. How about files? Oh, that's me. I have a file drawer because I'm a dumper. I dump it. I go through it later. Anybody really good with Canvas and able to do that on Canvas yet? Maybe getting there, or online, those Google Docs and things that kids can do. Seesaw has those options for student portfolios. I believe Dojo has some of that stuff going on now too. I haven't used Dojo since they updated those things, but I hear that they have some good stuff on there. So there's so many options for how you can manage it. We're not going to micromanage that. You have the freedom to organize those things the way that you want. So whatever tools you're going to need, start thinking as you're setting up your classroom now, when you find that empty binder or that binder that has curriculum back from 2011, dump it. You can use that binder now. I know I have crates coming all over the place, and I usually find ways to use them all, but if you have a crate you're not currently using, throw some hanging folders in there. Your writing portfolios that's also a writing portfolio spot, so that's something that you already are used to doing. However works for you. I know Canvas has some really great options for how to collect student work and how to build those bodies of work. I personally am not an expert about that. I just know it's possible. And so that's a goal for me this year, is to try and get really well versed in what Canvas can offer us on that end, that assessment end for our kids, so that we can keep track of that in an easy, streamlined way. So let's see, what's next? So accessibility, this is something to consider. Last year, we had discussions as instructional coaches about what are we doing with data? Where is that data? How do we know what kids are doing? How do we know what to put on a grade card? I had teachers panicking, calling me. I have all of my grade card stuff at school. I didn't bring it home with me. I can't complete the grade card. And I was able to say to them, do you have any other data online that you can access? And some of them did. And that was really their saving grace, to be able to have something that they could access to have evidence for the grades that they were giving kids. So this accessibility piece is really big. Being able to take things home with you, or having it online where you can access it from home, that's going to be really important as we go into potentially needing to do progress reports from home or grade cards from home. And we may end up doing conferences from home if that's where we land. And you need to have that data, that evidence on hand for parents, so that when you're telling them their child is struggling and they're saying, yeah, well, we've been out of school, oh well, you can say, no, really, this specifically is what we need to work on. I know as a parent myself, and I know as you all as parents yourselves, if my kid is struggling, I'm not sure what to do with that. But if I have a teacher say they are struggling with this, and here's how you can work on that, that means something to me. And that gives me some empowerment to know what to do, especially if I'm trying to deal with a whole lot of things, being out of work, being home with kids, and all of those types of things that come with quarantine. PST meetings. This is going to be, I don't know how many people have shifted this within their schools. These things are going to start being a part of our PST meetings, having that evidence that you bring with you. If you have a student concern, if you're noticing they are not performing on grade level, we need something that shows, okay, they're not on grade level, but let's talk a little bit deeper about that. What is it that's keeping them from being on grade level? We as interventionists have learned a great deal about some fantastic tool. I'm sorry, Rachel, I just saw you. Did you catch it? I'm sorry. Some fantastic school tools for looking into exactly what our kids are missing. And we, I think, have done such a really great job at our intervention services for our kids and making sure that we get them what they need. I think we're now in a place where we can really start to refine our practices and our processes. And instead of just saying, hey, they're below reading level, let's put them in a group, really defining what is it that they're missing. You know, is it a comprehension issue? Because if it's a comprehension issue, we don't want to put them in an intervention group that's working on phonemic awareness. That doesn't make sense. So in order to make our intervention as effective as possible, we need to have evidence of what our kids can do and where they're struggling. So that evidence is going to be really important in the PST meetings and also within your kid talks, so that you know what they can do. I don't know about you, but I have been in meetings with some fantastic reading recovery teachers who look at me and say, well, can they do this and this? And I look at them and say, I don't know. And so we have to pull out that data, or I need to go back and check and see and write it down, because we can't keep track of all these kids and all the things they can and can't do inside our heads. So having that, all of that in one place where I can pull up, okay, I don't know if Johnny can do that. Let me get out his folder and see if I can find some evidence for that. That's really valuable. So what might be included? Amber has done this fantastic job. The coaches developed this, and Amber has made it super easy for you all to be able to access exactly what your grade level is going to have in their spec. So this is not a limited list. This is what we'll be looking for. So if a principal comes in and says, hey, I need to see your spec, these are the things that they're looking for. This is what we would expect to see in it. If you have access, which I know you do have access to the slide, if you want to go ahead and click on yours and pull it up, you'll find it actually looks the same as what you would have collected before. These are all things that have always been expected with our FABs. Some of this stuff is stuff we would have put in the SAPs. So it's really nothing new. You will see on there an asterisk about a proficiency scale. That's what I was talking about earlier. That is only for your standards-based leads that will be working on helping us to really develop and refine those proficiency scales and what evidence will go towards that proficiency scale. Eventually, that will be a part of what you're collecting. And ideally, with those proficiency scales, once we really get into that standards-based system, you'll be able to really start streamlining some of that stuff. So consolidation of assessments. How are we going to put all of this together? Amber, did you want to talk about this part?
Hello, I sure would love to. So does anybody have any questions after looking over the spec? I don't want to say guidelines, but ideas or bullets or asterisks or whatever you want to call it. Does anybody have any questions? It should look very familiar. The only new thing for each grade level would be the beginning of the year writing prompt that you would see at the very top, which I feel like most people have probably heard about some way, shape, or form. If you haven't, now you have. We're going to do a quick beginning of the year writing prompt. But besides that, is everyone pretty good? I'm seeing a lot of head nods. Perfect. So how do you put it all together? So Darylyn did a great job when she was talking about, you know, some of us are binder people, crate people, online people. I know a lot of 4, 5, 6, I hear a lot of how they do a lot of their student samples. The students are typing and they have their own Google Drives and their own folders within the Google Drives. And that's so foreign to my first grade brain that I'm like, oh, I have papers. So whatever works for you. We were really hoping when we had talked about making these changes to have examples to show you guys, and then we didn't come back to school after spring break. So we just had to type it out basically. So it's not as fancy, but we were thinking, you know, if you had a binder, you could have it organized by student. Each student could have a tab. You could have it by assessments. You can have it by quarter. I know a lot of times I see math where all the math is just clipped together, like this is topic 1, topic 2, topic 3, and you keep it all together. Some teachers like to sort it out. Same thing for a crate. You could have it by student, by assessment, by quarter. Online, the sky's the limit. You can do tons of things. I don't know how you would get everything online, because I'm thinking like math tests. I know they do take them online, but we also have the paper. So you might have to have some online, some either binder, crate, or folders if you love folders. But at the end of the day, the biggest thing is what's user-friendly for you and how can you get it all in one spot? Because again, like Darylyn was saying, if we are having, you know, kid talks or PSTs, or all of a sudden you have a parent conference, you know, those conferences that come up last minute and you're like, I need some data to take with me. Well, now I have a crate. Everything is there. Everything is going with me. Or we have an AMI day where we're home and we're not here for the assessment window. And so now all of a sudden I have to look back at my anecdotal records and my lesson plans and my notes I've been taking on the students and the little assessments I've done along the way. I'm thinking about reading, like reading levels. I'm gonna have to look at my running records I've been taking, my anecdotal notes I've been taking, looking at my group notes to see, are they truly on grade level? Because I don't know. I hope this isn't the case, but we might be pulling that for our grade card for one of the quarters. So it's I think a wonderful year to just kind of hone back in on that and refine our practices when it comes to assessments and how that looks. So really, again, you can put it together however you want, as long as you have something put together. That's the biggest thing, of course. So now it's your time to ask questions. If you have any concerns, any comments.
You guys haven't come up with the beginning of year writing prompt yet, have you? Or is that,
Yes.
is it on
it's
on
done.
Canvas?
I can speak only for BE. I don't know, Darylyn, if you've got it on your Canvas page yet or not, but ours is on there. If you go into Canvas, the literacy Canvas, it's under assessments, writing prompts. There's now a beginning of the year tab. It says BOY writing prompt, and you open it up. And it's basically something like, I don't know it off the top of my head, but it's like, you know, something you did over the summer. And it could be literally anything. Like they can write about sitting and staring at the TV. We don't really care. We want to see what their writing ability is. So it's not necessarily a fun time you've had, because we all have those kids that are like, I didn't have any fun ever, you know. So we try to make it as kid friendly and user friendly as possible, so they could just say, you know, I ate cereal every morning, whatever it is that they need to say or do, just so we can see their writing. Because we know we do have our third quarter data from last year, but we know that's third quarter data. There's been 5 months. So we needed something that was a little more fresh than that. Good question.
Do you want us to do it like day one, first week of school?
First week of school is what we've talked about, and it's just a 1 day. There's a whole PowerPoint created, just like all the other assessments that we've done. It looks the exact same. There's a little read aloud to listen to, and, you know, turn and talk to a partner, now write about it. It's 1 day. I was envisioning like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, somewhere in there, just depending on when you get your classroom set up and you feel like, hey, we could probably sit and write for maybe 10, 15 minutes, depending on, you know, grade, kindergarten, like 5 to 10 minutes, whatever that looks like. But yeah, sometime during that first week, so we can see where they are.
Yeah, I think your first day is going to be pretty full with trying to get, you know, even up to second grade onto that Canvas page and helping them to navigate that and learn about that, because that's priority number one. Is they will know, you know, should day 2 we're home, they will know how to access what they need to access. So that's your priority. So sometime within that week, if you can get that done, that's ideal.
Good question.
I was going to ask, for like, how long should you keep all of those assessments? Like normally for like my running records and things like that at semester, I kind of get rid of them and then start like a new collection of stuff. Because I mean, if you think about 22 kids having all those assessments for the whole entire year, that's a lot of space. So how long should we keep those assessments for? Or like, you know, the anecdotal records and things like that?
Amber, do you want to answer that? Or it's a good question, and I think it's when Amber and I actually have discussed this ourselves. When I started teaching back in 2001, they told me I needed to keep 2 years worth of data for my students. So like my class 2 years ago, I would have their data, and then I would have to start purging from there. I don't think that we need to do that necessarily. I do think it's important to have a record of progress over time from the beginning of the year. So I usually had a drawer, a file drawer, because I couldn't keep all that in a binder necessarily of all of their running records and all of my anecdotals and all of that kind of stuff. So I would take, you know, that semester and I would put it in my file drawer and put in my new. But having something to show across the year that they have been making progress, because I have had to look back and go, wait, this is where we were in first semester and now we're still here. What's happening? That data over that year long makes a difference whenever you're really trying to, you know, like I said, problem solve. We don't want to provide intervention that isn't what a student really needs. And if we can be looking over time to watch that progress, that's really valuable. Now, I have been known to put things in my closet. Susie, I think that I have found some records that I could give to you from years ago when I cleaned out my closet. Actually, I tossed everything whenever I switched classrooms, but I did find some stuff from some classes way back when. But yeah, I think having a year, not everything, you can be choosy about what you collect. Certainly the things on that list per quarter, you should have at least 4 quarters worth of something from that list. But then additionally, if you're seeing that the writing isn't progressing, it's not getting any better, you might have a little more for that student. If you're seeing that they seem to max out in their reading, they were progressing and then all of a sudden they've just kind of stalled, which some kids will do that at certain levels. It's like they have this big leap they have to make and they can't do it. You might have more for that student in that area. But it is good to keep it over a year-long process and to have that on hand. And I would definitely put it at least over the summer. Should anything come back, I like to keep it the following year so that when those PSTs come and when that teacher comes to you and says, hey, I'm getting ready to PST this student, what do you have to say about that? I have that data to say, well, especially if they say you didn't do a PST on this student, why not? I have that evidence to say, well, I didn't see any concerns. Let me show you the data that I have on them. It's just good to have that backup. Now, 6 years worth, no, you don't need to keep it that long.
Yeah, and the only thing I would add to what you were saying, Darylyn, was I know whenever I came into the district, it was talked to me, like I was told to keep everything through parent-teacher conferences the next year, because that's usually the end of the first quarter. And by then, PSTs have started. If there's some sort of issue that's going to SPED or, anything like that, it's happened by conference time. Because usually when you sit down with your parents, if there's concerns, it comes up then. And a few times I've had teachers come back. I feel like it's more behavioral anecdotal notes that they're looking for, not necessarily academic. But I have had teachers come back and say, like Darylyn said, hey, what do you remember about so-and-so? Well, a year, that many months ago, I don't know, but I can pull up some things and go, oh yeah, yes, let's talk about this student. And so that was always my rule of thumb. Like if we made it through conferences, parents or teachers weren't saying anything by then I felt like I could be like, okay, like we're done with this. And we'll do the same thing at the end of the year like we did last year, where the coaches are going to collect, this time it'll be 4th quarter data instead of 3rd quarter, but we'll collect your 4th quarter reading and writing assessments and hold on to them. In the past we've had the SAPs, make sure I've got all my acronyms right. The SAPs we used to pass on, well, we're not passing those on anymore. So coaches are keeping that data and we're keeping that all year long. So we'll have the absolute most recent for the entire year. If for some reason a big thing comes up and we need to look at their reading or writing, but I would definitely say for the year, and if not, like at least through conference time. So if there are issues. Good question, Rachel.
We still pass on like 4th quarter writing, like this year, let's say we're there 4th quarter. Will we still pass on their 4th quarter writing to their 2nd grade teacher?
So the coaches are collecting that. So if you remember last year for 3rd quarter, we collected reading and writing. The coaches are going to collect it because we're not going to pass the SAPs on. So yes and no, we will collect it for you. Any other questions? Got some good thinking.
I don't have a question, Amber, but just a thought. A lot of times when I take my anecdotal notes with writing, I'm on one of the grids and I walk around. And if we're keeping those for individual students, then I need to be aware of that as I'm setting up my year to have an individual page for every child so that I'll have those records for that child all in a place.
That's a great thing. I think, and Darylyn, correct me if I'm wrong, feel free to still do it as a classroom. Like this is my whole class. That's how I did my notes too. I did mine as a class. As long as you have them and you can access them, whatever system works for you is fabulous. We're not changing the way you take notes. We are starting conversations of collecting ideas. It's come up actually in another session I was in when we were talking about, it was reading anecdotal notes basically, but talking about how everyone's taking notes because we all have different methods. And so we've talked about getting them together and looking at them to see what works well for some, and that might help others, because we know that conferencing time is really tricky sometimes, and it usually comes down to the paper we're using. It's just not working for us. So if you have something that works for you, don't change it, because you'll be able to go back to it and go, okay, I can see how little Johnny did week after week after week, even though it's on the page with all of his friends. Does that make sense? Any other thoughts, guys? Good. Okay, so on the slides I shared with you, you have, or that are on the main TLI page, there is a sign-in sheet, but I'm also going to put it over here in the chat if that's easier for you to access. So please make sure you sign in so that you can get credit for being here. And if there's not any other questions or concerns, we'll be ready to get off. We'll talk about this a little more. You'll hear this kind of spiel again during one of our team meetings when we come back to school. So now you guys are in the know and you can help us out. All right, is everyone good? Wonderful. Well, when you're ready, you're welcome to sign off. We appreciate you joining us today.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Jody.
Thanks, ladies.
Thank you, Susie.